Sylvia began laughing. Truly, you think you can win? Well, I'm sorry to tell you, but you're fiercely outmatched. We're quite able to read the level of our opponents. And you, my armored friend, have basically no magical ability whatsoever. Your magical essence is barely higher than any normal person. And even the little bit you do have probably only amounts to a slight amount of magical intuition, one might say. The ability to sense things that are not quite right. So I'm afraid, against experienced casters of our nature, you're sadly outmatched. Once again, I find myself wishing they could see me smiling under my mask. I looked over to them. Yeah, there's one problem with your little line of reasoning. I never said anything about using magic to beat you, I called out before flexing as hard as I possibly could. As I did, there seemed to be some sort of surge in the band that wrapped around me, and then suddenly it gave, but it didn't snap like a rope. Instead, it seemed to shatter like glass, scattering out, floating into the air, and then simply disappearing. I'm afraid you guys have made a miscalculation. I may not have magic powers, but that doesn't mean I'm powerless, I said, widening my stance. I'm really sorry about this. I honestly didn't want to hurt anyone when I came here. Well, other than Alice. But this little situation doesn't leave me much option. I have to get to my friend, and unfortunately that means I have to go through you two. So, I'll try not to be too rough, I shouted out, before dashing like a bullet in their direction. In no time at all, I was right on them. I could tell from the look on their faces they didn't expect me to be that fast, especially wearing a full suit of armor. But that works to my advantage. I'll just hit them with a solid hit. A punch to the gut should give them a nice nap, I thought, reeling back, swinging forward a punch, as I heard words called out. Sanctum! And with that, a huge, fluorescent, spectral shield just emerged in thin air in between me and Evelyn, the one that I was swinging for. My punch hit it. It felt like impacting steel. It didn't budge, only sending some cracks through the spectral form of this purple floating shield. Well, I have to be honest. I didn't expect you to be that fast. It appears this might be more difficult than I initially anticipated. But the results should be the same. I'd say your strength and speed is on par with your average vampire. No, I'd say you're a little bit stronger and faster than that. More like a mid-range vampire. However, you'll find that we're quite capable of dealing with that. And suddenly, Rebecca was right beside me, sweeping in rapidly. There's no way any human could move that fast. I barely even noticed it, whirling her finger at me with that pink light. Pilatar! She shouted, as there was a bright flash of pink light, and I felt myself impacted by a very strong force, like some sort of burst of energy that sent me flying back, probably about 5 or 10 feet before catching myself, sliding through the grass and digging up chunks of it, before coming to a stop. Wow, that armor is pretty impressive. Most normal people would have been sent flying way farther than that, and they definitely wouldn't have stayed on their feet. Hey, is that armor magic or something? Rebecca asked after blasting me for a loop. Honestly, I didn't expect their magic to have that much impact to it. Luckily, the armor seemed to be doing its job. I may have felt the impact, but based on her description, I probably should have felt way more of it. It felt no worse than taking a punch to the chest. Not exactly pleasant, but at least tolerable. I guess I forgot. Aside from being magic casters, they're also half vampires. That means they're going to be stronger, faster than regular people. so I'm not going to be able to count on pure brute strength. If I want to win a battle of fists, I ain't gonna do it. Sorry, I shouted out. I guess I underestimated you guys too. Forgot about the whole half-vampire thing. And I am starting to learn a bit about this magic stuff. For example, you guys can make magical shields to defend yourself versus outright attacks. Now the only question is how much they can take. I was able to damage it with a punch, which means they can be damaged. And if they can be damaged, they can be broken. A 2-on-1 fight isn't really to my advantage. And I can't cast spells. So it looks like I really have no other choice but to even the odds, I said, releasing the latch that opened the jaw on my helmet. And as it did, a stream of silver liquid flowed out, pouring out in gallons, beginning to float around, swirling around me as I stood, beginning to form a swirling mess of silver liquid, churning and moving in all different directions, floating beside me in the air, nearly 4 foot across at this point. Heavy metal battle sphere, I called out as the last of the liquid left me, joining the rest inside the sphere, churning, moving and flowing in different directions, and I slammed my helmet closed, the jaws clenching shut tightly. What in the blazes is that? Sylvia said, looking shocked. Whoa, sis. That does not look like any magic I've ever seen. But it is super cool. How do you do that? She said, smiling over in my direction. Sorry, I replied, but I don't really have time to explain that, I said as I raised my hand. Remember, I'm on kind of a crunch schedule. Need to go save my friend, and you guys aren't making this easy. So, once again, I'm just gonna have to try not to hurt you too much, I said, as the swirling sphere compressed into itself, becoming solid. Rapidly, Sylvia and Rebecca made some gestures, Rebecca with her little swirl, and Sylvia with a strange beckoning of her fingers as if she was calling someone in her direction, both announcing the same words, Asgar, pulling short blades from out of seemingly thin air, one pink, one purple, those blades extending out like freaking lightsabers, and then again with the gesture in that same statement as before, Sanctum, both of them using those gestures, and then a giant shield emerging, twice the size of the one before, blocking both of them, a strange mixture of pink and purple in different layers. Heavy metal wrecking ball, I shouted, forcing the giant ball of steel forward as fast as I could. It shot forward like a bullet, like a giant cannonball, impacting the shield that they had created. However, even though they put both their energy into it, the cannonball shattered right through it, both of them barely managing to evade it, shifting to the left and right, but still they took swings at it with their sword as it passed. I could see sparks of energy flying from the cannonball from both sides as they tried slashing into it. Sparks flew, pink and purple sparks, and orange thrown in the mix, as their blades grinded against it as it passed, slamming into the ground 20 feet behind them. What in the bloody hell was that? Sylvia shouted. It just smashed right through. I'll say it did, Rebecca said. Sis, I think we may have seriously underestimated the difficulty of this one. At that point, from the ball 20 foot behind them, 2 chains shot out in each one of their directions, with barbs attached at the end, flying in their direction. No human would have been able to evade it, or even hear it coming. But being a half vampire apparently has its advantages.